Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Bonnie. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the poetry event coordinator here at Brookline Booksmith. Today, it is my pleasure to host three incredible poets, Nadia Colburn, Sasha Steensen, and Melissa Dickey, for a delightful evening of poetry. Before I introduce our poets, I do have just a few housekeeping notes. Firstly, copies of the poets' books are available for sale at the back counter over there. There'll be time to purchase books and have them signed at the end of the event. I also encourage you to support the poets' work in whatever way you can, whether that means buying a book, following them online, or saying nice things to them while you're here tonight. It's all valid ways to support, so thank you so much for being here. Please keep your phones off or on silent while our poets are reading, and we appreciate your consideration while they're sharing their work. Also know that the event is being live streamed at this iPad right here by the column. Hello, YouTube. Our audience should not be visible to our viewers on YouTube other than the backs of a few heads maybe. But if you don't want to be live on YouTube, just don't walk in front of it and you will be golden. And finally, we will have a Q&A at the end of the event, so please hold your questions till the end, but definitely have them ready to go. We also have a monthly poetry reading series here at Brookline Booksmith called Third Thursdays Poetry, and these events, along with our other poetry programming, are all listed on our website, so if you're a poetry lover, please do check us out online. And now for the fun part, introductions. Nadia Colburn is the author of the poetry books I Say the Sky and The High Shelf, and her poetry and prose have appeared in more than 80 publications, including The New Yorker, American Poetry Review, The Kenyon Review, Spirituality and Health, Lion's Roar, and the Yale Review. She holds a PhD in English from Columbia University. Nadia is a yoga teacher and serious student of Thich Nhat Hanh and is the founder of Align Your Story Writing School, which brings traditional literary and creative writing studies together with mindfulness, embodied practices, and social and environmental engagement. She lives in Cambridge, Massachusetts with her husband and 2 children, and you can find her at nadiacolburn.com, where she offers meditations and free resources for writers. Thank you, Nadia, for being here. Sasha Steensen is the author of 6 books of poetry, A Magic Book, The Method, House of Deer, Gatherist, Everything Awake, and Well. She also writes long-form essays, 2 of which can be read online at Essay Press and Tupelo Quarterly. She's currently at work on a hybrid project called Overland that documents the seizure and subsequent development of hundreds of acres of Native American land in northern Colorado. This ongoing interactive project can be viewed on her website. She teaches undergraduate and graduate literature and creative writing classes at Colorado State University, where she was named the 2023 Stern Distinguished Professor. Steensen serves on the advisory board for the Test Site Poetry Series and is a poetry editor for Colorado Review. She lives in Fort Collins, Colorado with her husband, 2 daughters, a flock of chickens, 2 standard poodles, and a barn cat. Learn more about her work at sashasteensen.com, and thank you, Sasha, for being here. And finally, Melissa Dickey is the author of 2 previous books of poetry, Dragons and the Lily Will, and her poetry and essays have appeared in Bennington Review, New Orleans Review, Columbia Poetry Review, and the anthology The Anatomy of Silence, among other places. Born and raised in New Orleans, she currently lives in Western Mass with her partner and their 4 children. She teaches literature and writing at an independent high school. And thank you, Melissa, for being here. Nadia, Sasha, and Melissa met via a listserv for poets who are also mothers. This community, which has been in existence for almost 20 years, has been a place of support and encouragement for all 3 writers on many fronts. As writers, teachers, mothers, and women, they share many of the same concerns and questions as you will likely hear in their readings they offer tonight. And they would be happy to address related questions in the Q&A if this background is of interest to you all. So get those questions ready to go. And please give a warm welcome to our wonderful poets.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. Appreciate you. Thanks everybody for coming. I am going to read mostly from a new book, but I was going to start with a poem from an older book By the way, if you buy either of my other books, you can have a copy of this book, which is what it starts with 40 poems I wrote during Lent, like several years back. So it's Lent again, so I thought I'd read one. I put my left ear on the desk and asked for a poem. Nothing arrives nearby. I put my right ear on my chest and asked for a poem. Where could it be? I make many things, not least among them errors. I also dream and receive. Let us not forget what is shallow and what is deep eventually meet. Little Lent poem. I also, Bonnie mentioned this online project that I'm working on. It may or may not ever be a book, but I have a bunch of postcards if anyone's interested to check out that project on the land that she mentioned. So I'm reading from my new book, Well, and I think it'll become clear what it's about pretty quickly. But it starts with, it has a little epigraph from Audre Lorde. My body, a barometer. Given a preface. We all have words we hear as bells, as bellows, as bellwethers. When these words are spoken, we hear them louder, clearer. They rouse us from our waking sleep. You know the words I mean. Word bells. Mostly women have given me my words. Creek was given, God was given, garden was given, margin was given. My teacher taught me all words run along the margins of their secrets. Rachel Carson called the edge of the sea the marginal world. She loved the crabs that scuttled at the margins. Several years before her breast cancer diagnosis, Carson wrote, "The little crab alone with the sea became a symbol that stood for life itself, for the delicate, destructible, yet incredibly vital force that somehow holds its place amid the harsh realities of the inorganic world. The little crab is also cancer's symbol. The margin of a cancerous tumor is removed during surgery. When no cancer cells are found at the edge of the tissue, the margin is described as negative. When cancer cells are found at the edge of the tissue, the margin is described as positive. The margin where ill and well meet." What if the body is an ocean which at every tide covers what it needs to survive? What if the body is an ocean which at every tide recovers what it needs to survive? Body is given, survive is given. What if the body is boundless, marginless, when afloat on a boundless, marginless water? My daughters watch me as I swim out into the Pacific, past the waves, and float. They dip their toes, but do not dare swim without me watching them. Women in crisis sometimes address other women in letters or themselves in diaries, journals, notebooks, as protection against a world hostile toward their bodies. Or they address both. Friend is given. They send their message out into the not always greatly hopeful towards something standing open. They float. A margin is open, as is a poem. Maybe margins shelter the inapprehensible of poetry. Maybe a poem is a margin, a poem. It took me nearly 3 years to obtain an image of my cancerous breast. Though the breast belonged to me, the image, I learned, was not my property. Nothing looked threatening. Instead, the tumor resembled an oyster mushroom, and the veins its accompany high fee. My mycelium. Every 3 months, when the new images are created, the mushroom is still gone. But what is wellness anyway? To be in the world and of it? Or does wellness mean to be in the beached margin of the sea, where we are only not entirely ourselves, but microbial, autopoetic, grass leafy, sea caly, polygenomic, a collection of secrets sent or kept, a journal, diary, letter, notebook, is a volcano, is a kingdom of cinders, is a lover, is a poem, is the recipient internal or external or both, is a reaching, regardless. Once one is known, one knows in which ways one is alone. Once one is alone, one knows in which way one is known, and diagnosis is given. Gnosis is given. Given is given. Abby gave me a poem. Perhaps we'll open the day's doors, and then we shall enter the unknown. The next two poems are from a section that I always, for some reason, read the title of the section every time I read any poems in it, so I guess they're titled with the same title. That's my guess. So for those who drink now from once pure wells, I speak to everything. Hello there, expanse, expense. Hello there, silent spring. Hello there, dead ringing. Hello there, black widow. Hello there, open window. Hello there, body speaking. Hello there, new tumor. Hello there, a word it will say every day from now on. The word being, being. Hello there, being. Hello there, thin layer of soil over our earth. Think layer of soil, layer of skin. Think contaminants, think continents of it. Crop spraying across the street. Think no barrier between. What is soil, skin, but eons of interactions, lichen to and bark and husk and peel and hull and shell and sheath and sleeve, and what else covers and opens itself at the same time? What else permeable? What else person means to sound through? What else lodging place, skin and soil alike? What else bacteria, fungi, algae? What else blessed springtails? We can't even see what else mites born only in the fallen needle of the spruce tree. What else earthworm? What else earthworm? What else earth warms us? What else? My birth canal, my chamber. I pray that my grave may be ready to receive me, ill or well. Let nothing else grow here, not even our own being, not even our own being. Well, what else? For those who drink now from once pure wells, I say to myself, Cell, your name and my mind make a pomegranate. How to imagine you doing your work. How to think of you building yourself anew. How to speak your name without becoming a snake. What color your membrane? What shape? At the extremity of this life, there is a question. The things below are the things above. The harmed ozone. The poet who knows there is no invention to behold. November 30th, MRI. Also, there's a little epigraph from 1 Corinthians. I die every day. You gotta love Paul, writing about dying every day with an exclamation point. So, I die every day, 1 Corinthians 15. Praise be to God, my body has become an object. Here I am, and I am solid. I shall not be moved. I am as a TV mounted on a wall. I am as a piece of tinfoil bald. I am as my dog in his deepest sleep. I am as a dead weight. I am as waiting for nothing to change. I am as shot through with beams. I am as tissue pinpricked with light. I am as the night without a scar. I am as a car filled with daughters. I am, as they say, needed. And the needed thing can't go away without tucking in its pocket the other needed thing. The day. Who can do all the chores with such efficiency, occasionally even grace? Who can open the jar of pickles? Who can tie the shoe? Who can follow the sleepwalker up the bunk bed ladder? Who can calm the raging storms of morning? Who can be the as? That means not just in similarity, but also simultaneously. This year, the peonies barely bloomed, the hydrangeas too. An underthirst of vigor, seldom utterly allayed. Why aren't you ever afraid? My daughter asks me. I die every day. I sit down in my cellula and pray. December 28th, Dr. James M. Dickinson, looking at my husband, but ostensibly addressing me, says, I would encourage you to consider a double mastectomy and implants with whatever size you choose. You are young and would like to wear a bathing suit. Obviously did not use that, doctor. When it comes, January 18th. When it comes to conventional cancer treatment, everything that cures also harms. Paradox is the poet's home. When I lay my naked torso down each morning on the harm cure machine, I want nothing more than to write poems. But I'm told not to move, not to speak. I am, however, allowed to breathe, and breathing is its own kind of poem. This is the last poem I'll read. It's called The Walk, and it's a lot of these poems are for friends of mine who helped me throughout my life, but particularly during this period. So this is called The Walk, and it's for Christy, as well as our daughters, Hannah, Phoebe, Greta, and Iris. When the page answered, so did the larks, and the long-awaited mountain we climbed many times, but had not fully seen. Its streams, for example, or the river they feed, or the animal tracks we photographed but forgot to look up or track down, or when we saw what seemed to be a bobcat, or was it a lynx or a mountain lion? We chose the median, one having appeared in your dream. Its tail we saw differently, me black-tipped, you white underneath. And having loved the word lynx, the word almost without vowel, the word asking why, when so few words do, so few words willing to betray themselves in this way. Why it was hard to see exactly, I cannot say, but there was a way in which we had become preoccupied by our daughters. It was as if the page and the word could not bear it any longer, this necessary releasing into the world. It was as if the cliff we often climbed was not able to face the water below, its mirroring, its sparkling, its overcasting shadow. As if the coyote we once saw running knew to move away from us, as if we opened our hearts to triumph, when triumph really meant twilight. Or was it dawn when we turned to our next life with a willingness to be unwilling to be in agony any longer? The ache the foot felt whenever it touched the runway, its black asphalt left to crack after too many planes, wind at their wheels, refused to land on that treacherous path. So we moved, remember, toward grief, and then I guess an opening, like the one we once found in the meadow. Or was it a field, a clearing, no doubt, and each flower working its white petals out of the ground? Were they starflowers, or were they some sort of yarrow? Either way, they answered not unlike the columbine we passed at the tree line, its open, purple mouth, also asking why. We thought at first it was a way to pass the solitude, together, a sort of rhythm to the day that gave way to the heavy restlessness we both felt, not unlike the mountain clouds forming over the house and turning suddenly to snow or rain, everything dreary and glistening, skimming even the surface of the pond, the lightning lit up when we, okay, out of time. I'll finish it because there's really just a second one. was supposed to be excited. We always took the dogs, the only ones who seemed genuinely happy to walk alongside us, their muddy paws goat-heady, heavy with running, with prairie dog longing, with digging for voles or tugging feathers from the already half-eaten magpie wing in the sandy, wet soil at the edge of the barbed wire fence. That reminds me. Remember when we felt the bird overhead but looked instead in the opposite direction and were unsure if the sweep was an owl's or a hawk's, the sun blaring, obscuring belief, like the lynx in the foothills shadow where the reservoir runs off, collects by the natural resource building? It isn't as if we always walked in some remote place. In fact, we mostly did not. Why, I'm not sure, but likely we had to return quickly to our daughters, to the collected house finch's nest built on the eaves nestled between the inherited, useless satellite dish, its unworldly blue eggs, and the cowbird's single speckled one, the nest almost blown off for a whole howling spring month, while her younger self marveled and checked every day for hatchlings that never came, until we brought the nest in and positioned it on our most visible shelf, where it still sits, its muddy, its twigs with dried buds falling off, the way after years of why this just appeared on the page. Water from the rock, my friend, the walks, the dusk, the dawn, the gray light, depending on the season, the freeze or heat, appearing or disappearing. Water from the rock, the ever-bearing walk we still to this very day take. Thank you.
Okay, hello. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Bonnie. I'm so happy to be here. I'm Melissa. Thank you, Sasha. I'm going to read 3 different things. The first 2 things are from the book. And it's the first poem in the book, and the first section is called Ordinary Entanglement. So that will be the title of this, Ordinary Entanglement. I remember hearing our heartbeats doubled, boats in the fog of a valley, a feather in glass, a feather cupped, now napping little insect inside her house, with a white, obtuse angle of roof and a cat door cut from fence posts. Or so I imagine, while in one nightmare, a voice echoes, copycatting me, and when I wake in the night, I wake in a thought. I put the teething in the middle, in the thought, and it feels as if sick, the thought that makes me. Dry sticks, 2 open, spacious pine cones lit. Once we saw lightning strike a tree wide, a metal breaking sound that spread. What if, the fear says, still, anger remains the enemy. Bees in those purple weeds, pretty weeds, a charge against watery instability. What will you walk into? What will you walk in, feet? Keep warm. Child says, a hallway must lead somewhere. We must escalate the world we want. Every day the voices raise. In rooms you must enter. Don't, but you must. Don't, but you must. Here violence begins in the kitchen at breakfast. Where is that other world possible? Each day stacked like so many logs, like wood that won't burn, or it burns so slow. Each day stacked like so many laws, her cutting teeth, me signing petitions, cleaning shit from bodies you love, as the sun sneaks up amid the detritus. Must the possible be comprehensible, the past a straight line? No blood, no foul, my father says, while the kids fight. And one night, I dream of screaming in anger at my daughter while my father screams in anger behind me, where marks are made and covered with honey. Baby's nails need cutting or she'll scratch on accident. Hag, nag, female words, but fist is androgynous, is in. There is no murmur, there is no shore. The trees come apart as if lightly glued,
and a rich friend says, I'm just living off the land. The darkness hurts my eyes, trying to see what congeals now in the heart, as if everything were made and broken. The days passed behind, and the now dead woman said to everyone, It's Monday, she said. I said, yes, it's Monday. It's Monday, she said, again 5 minutes later. The proof, a bone on grease, a plate. How much hope I once had for the future. When we married, the word husband was weird. A round uprising, a bite on skin. It did not apply, and I was no wife. Now I look in the mirror for what self I can't see. I am something I may or may not believe in. Her husband alive, she would get confused, but I never dream of her or you. I remember getting needles to encourage a turning. I remember the press of small steel balls at the top, open part of my ear. I could use a loosening. If only I weren't so fondled. If only I weren't a luster, been bashed. These small and crooked stones, stepped on, half sunk. Another night, I dream my daughter on fiery coals while I yell at her, then realize she's lying on a fire, and I pick her up, and her back's burned black and red and raw, and her teeth are shot through with blue, as if with electricity. And this was also the year I let the jack-o'-lanterns rot, half frozen, half soggy, on our front stoop, and I tell you, hey, I'm not going to deal with the jack-o'-lanterns. In part because I'm sick of being a woman. Got a lot of age in her face, my father says to me. Boys are just bad, but girls are little witches, my aunt says to me. And welcome to the spinning world, goes the children's book. Welcome to the green earth. I am afraid I am less, and closing my eyes, I miss and do not miss sight. I have asked for patience. I have thanked the spirits. I am a gauge of what I do not know, a hat to cover sorrow. The heart develops first, before the brain. It is now too late to abort in this state. Okay, and then I'm going to read the third part of the book, which is called Breeding, and it's several short poems. And I'm just going to read them all like they're one thing. Breeding. I must be careful not to see everything through a wound. Still, that conflict between what I think I want and how it feels to live with what I thought I wanted. We're the bottom of the barrel. We have to speak up. How long will what they said echo? Penis head peeps through boxers. Why not? I keep trying to not get personal, but my brain gets in the way. The way her black bathing suit lay rumpled in the sun on the soles of her feet, on each blade of grass. The weeds called silver dollars mount the lily beds. Mama, you were exploding. You were exploding. I used my whole body to think. The boy moves the hull of a car. Hush. Talk to me, one car says to another. My underwear, hot pink, hides the blood. The bullseye is the body's response. I pour a glass of water and let it sit, not drinking. Passing windows, always peer in. I remember what others say, but not what I say in return. What would it mean to cure this restless good for something? The morning after I ask my dad not to speak to me in the mornings, he walks by and whispers, "Good morning." As I keep saying, there's more to be said. In the dream, I say to my husband, I am fed up and can't take it anymore. To my pregnant belly, he reads a poem low down. No one in my face instructs me. I push him out of myself. We follow the plan, though I worry the outcome. The outline we've imagined, the image, but not the feeling. Cluttered heart, blank anger boiling up, wanting a finished thing that can't be undone. Children who aren't yet broken by. What nervy formation hides in the cradle? What stalk of self? It would have never occurred to me to sit in the window, but I was not her. She asks if I'm interested in her collections: human hair, buttons, twigs. An insect on the table approaches. The kids work for hours beneath a daytime cockroach at rest on the wall, on the paper cutout letter D. What am I misunderstanding? The shapes succeed when they most resemble a shape you almost recognize. There once was a school for these windows. I wipe snot on my shorts, wear them again. Another knock at the same door. I'm a yard sale house dress in need of a pocket mend, a pus-filled bump rubbed wrong, but I try to say blessed and mean it. My uncle turns the radio up, stomps his boots, shakes the floor. I cower near while he is drunk. I learn to react, gathering reactions. All right, he yells, exuberant. And I know I've always been small. Good for your husband, not great for you, one nurse said after the pap smear. Again, we watched the desolate film in which every man is a predator. Mid-century modern Italian architecture, the backdrop of villas, marble masonry, church. Why is it that men blah, blah, blah? Gnats more attracted to light than my skin. Again, I misapprehend the space between kiss and cheek. Not like our bed last night in which, one hand on child to keep his sleep while you, I won't say the words between us. In my body, you're a green light, a clock chime, a glove. Makeup still on my face the next day, clothes across the floor. What's left in the bank of your eye, hidden synagogue of your mouth. Sometimes I forget how to tune to you, can't clear off the silt of collapse. A friend says, speak to the ghosts. Try saying, hello, I see you there. I have thought of this, I have tried. I've been chalk on the green board wiped. The sentence doesn't match the sentiment. Conclusion drawn, dull prickle on the arm. Don't know how I sleep, I only know that I wake up. When I clean out the name, the equivalent self, each time is an experiment. I eat day-old cake while my state upholds its sodomy law to keep oral sex illegal. Even the clouds are spread thin. However many times you paint it, sometimes the marriage disintegrates. Here moves the heavy machinery, the work. We search out darkness to match inside. The 6-year-old picks her nose and wipes the contents on the wall, where they stick, till the mama finds them and forces the girl to clean them off. Sometimes the mama herself chips the snot with fingernails and cloth. Geographies of where we touch, the trace, the map of that. And I'm just going to read one more from this new manuscript. Physical refinement. Things seem still up in the air, you said, and eventually I hung up. Outside in the public sun, hard-pulsed, dry-mouthed, faint, my body interviewed, found wanting. And then the paper-flapping wings sound. I looked, I did not move. 2 dragonflies swirled, paused, benched beside me, direct as I thought I could be. Unafraid, twisted. A loud voice filled a background in me. A loud voice drowned and awoke. So the book of necks and hips opened, we entered the world of thrill, of animality, of pages, touched, of the brink of risk, closer to that, actual contact, and circumspection clattered inside its margin and wouldn't quite stay.
Thank you all. That was great hearing your poem, Sasha and Melissa. I feel like it's such an attentive audience. Thank you. But I have my little singing bowl. so I'm going to use it. And just invite you to take a breath and settle into your body. I'm going to read the first poem for this book, I Say the Sky. I think it is such a beautiful dawn, and my mind, which wants to hold things as they are, cannot hold this morning, 1st of April, spring too early this year by 3 weeks. The daffodils of my city spurred forward by the warmth. Cannot hold Brett, gone, Patricia, gone, not the marching clouds, not the sky that is perched unaltering above the clouds, not the methane leaks, not the whales suffering the piercing sounds of boats. I reach out my hands, one and then the other, spread my fingers as light falls through them. So in this book, I was really exploring what I could hold, what we can hold collectively, and what we have to accept, how suffering and joy are part of the same world, how we contain all of that. So this next poem is called Up Flying. Whole flocks of geese in my childhood honking their way north, the streets dirty with pigeons, the sky blackened by starlings, each small pointed wing so close to another's it was just a blur. Now, 3 billion birds are missing. We wake to so many forms of emptiness. So much loss greets us in our sleep. In my childhood, I thought the world I'd entered would be the one I'd exit. In the poplar, one grackle whistles, not to me. I was in dialogue with other poets and Keats poems throughout the book, I think, in particular, and kind of asking how to write nature poems now to be in dialogue with the natural world that's changing so much, but that is still there and that we're part of, and that if there's anything, there's going to be a natural world. So just how that dialogue develops and where we are with it. Smaller even than last week, poor Booth. And this takes place not too far from here. She sits in her wheelchair, huddled over the oxygen that is pumped through a paper cup up in the direction of her nose as she struggles for breath, ready or not for the great transition. Her son greets us with jokes, asks about our New Year's resolutions, about whether we saw the new store on the road before we turned off to the nursing home. She opens her eyes, grunts, tells him to stop. This is important work. We get up, put Mozart's flute concerto on the old boombox, and do not talk. I don't know if this is the proper material for a poem, the almost death of an old lady I have almost come to love. Why not? Why hesitate? And why call what I feel for her almost love? What stone within my heart prevents me from giving myself completely? At night, when we are home, I think of her beautiful face, her eyelids always elegant, her smile at my daughter the same as it has always been. I think of her desire to protect the young, her mother dying when she was 10, and the Nazis soon to take over Hanover. She and her sister surviving because they were twins. Protection, what she did not get. What she could not entirely give her own children, the suffering seeping out. This is not a poem about escape. The Great Transition is not an escape, but a turn in which we meet the self we may not want to meet. And then what happens? Last year, at almost the same time, our friend's heart stopped for a moment. 2 months later, she saw shadows. They are coming, she said, terrified, fighting against them with all her force, as I sat on her bed. the dark approaching, but nothing, not even her own 10-year-old twins, could keep her fastened to this life. Darling, forgive me. Forgive me for what? I want so badly to live, sometimes I forget that I am alive, that this is enough, even the fear, the regrets, that we have each other, our children, this moment, that everything is a part. Even this difficult dance, the body getting smaller, thinner, the lips getting chapped, dried out, the heart getting ready to stop. Put the music on. Praise the sky and the stones that also breathe into this moment. Now, and then something else. So there are lots of poems about women's bodies. So this poem, the first section of this book, I think of as embracing other people's stories and a kind of more collective experience, and then it goes more into my own experiences. But noticing then how my own experiences through my body connect me to other bodies and women's bodies also. So this is about the birth of my first child. The physical world. For 9 months, I anticipated, as the other end of pain, a revelation, a world turned inside out, the sure logic of arithmetic undone. Each inch I grew marked a failure and a promise, my present physical certainty, my approaching release. But instead, torn open, I gave birth to the end of ideas. Beyond pain was born no understanding. Beyond understanding was revealed no new way of knowing, new sight, but another body, robust, which no thought set screaming, purple-faced, infuriated at air, or moved closer to my breast, or closed its thinly lidded, round, brown eyes, so soon worn out by the unfamiliar light. Catalog of beautiful girls. The girl with the open face feeding her sister from a bowl of soup. The girl with braided hair skipping rocks upon the water. The girl with her hand in her hand listening quietly as the men talk. Or the girl at the window. The girl in the plaid skirt. The girl who wears a string of beads at her neck. The girl with the scar on her face. The one sitting silent in the shade, the one running down the street. So in that one, I was kind of playing with what was said and what wasn't said, and you can fill in all the things that aren't said, which includes a lot of fun things, right? Anyway, but some not so fun. Sleeping Beauty. Who receives the kiss? Is this the story? No, go back. After the party, after the celebrations, when the uninvited one sweeps in, after they told the girl not to hold the needle, after they locked the woman at the top of the house, there is still always the same middle. No, no, I want to scream, the instrument sharp. And then the bushes, full of thorns, growing fast, and everyone sleeping. So there's a kind of companion piece called Imaginary World. Imaginary World. The women who come to the playground, the women who come to the market, to the bank. For a long time, we lived in hiding. Now, there is no longer any silence that can break. We've become supple, like the wind, that holds nothing back. So, maybe one day there won't be any more need for any secrets. There won't be anything that needs to be kept silent. Teach me. Teach me how to pray anywhere. Teach me that you live not only in the open field, the cardinals singing at first dawn, but also in the concrete parking lot of the Everett Mall, in the flashing lights of Old Navy, in the wires crossing the open expanse above me. The cars speed down the highway. Their tires spin, spin. There is so much work to do. Dark oil flows over the whole land. Teach me how to praise your whole body. And it's March, so I'll read a poem called March. All winter we walked on the fallen sky, walked on clouds until we fell thigh deep to earth. Now the clouds are running down the side of the mountain in small hidden rivers. What in you needs melting? What do you do with your anger and your hope? All night, down the side of the mountain, waters run together where we cannot see. Underneath, the earth is awakening. Once more, the tips of bare branches put out new buds. Again, they clasp their small palms together in prayer. Read a few more. Okay, this poem I'm about to read, I wrote a lot of these poems kind of at similar time. They were kind of a series, and I put together a manuscript. I felt like the manuscript was pretty done. And then I had this idea that I wanted to incorporate poems from other periods in my life into the manuscript and kind of embrace like my younger self in some way. So I did that, and most people actually can't tell which those earlier poems are, but this is a poem that I actually wrote when I was about 21. And I don't think I could imagine myself now at 51 standing here reading this poem, so what a funny world. 6 p.m. A lake flickers after snow, and I enter the refraction, like playing the piano, fingers moving underhand as if to get somewhere, the hours stretched with Chopin. In children, too, it's habitual. A group mazes its way along the street like an amoeba under a microscope, each small form apart, pulling out. But once, when the day still held us to itself, there was a sudden turning toward, as when in Wisconsin, from the back of the car, I first saw the man in the moon. Those craters, the eyes, the wide shadow at center, the mouth. It was so obvious. Now I'm always trying to forget, so it can come again naturally, like the cat through the crack in the window above the garage, or the apple blossoms that cover the ground like newly fallen snow. Invocation. Sleep, like a golden rain, fall through me. Hard earth that resists the shovel's metal blade, yield. Buried seed, grow plump, split, push out your extravagant green tendril, reaching for the sun. It's happening. It's happening now. Okay. Today, like yesterday and the day before, it's happening. It's so simple, I hardly need any language. Right there through the window and in the trees, hardly visible, the birds are back and going about their business. Do they remember their long journeys, the tall buildings, the wires? Are they singing for the ones who are absent? Are they, like me, singing to welcome in the dawn? While everyone else in my family is sleeping, the city is taken over by their song. And everything, bathed in the silver light of morning, is part of another story, and its own. And I'll just read 2 more. Rain pours off the eaves of the house onto the concrete, and finally I open my throat. World, I say, of floods and droughts, world of the red heart, of the heart of pink beneath the clouds, of the tender-hearted, of the clenched-hearted, of the troubled, somersaulted, suspended-hearted. Someone is coming to meet me. The table is set. and I am coming down the stairs to open the door, dressed in blue jeans and a wool sweater with holes. And I am knocking outside, standing on the stoop. I think I am ready to open my arms, right here in my own house, to receive myself, to receive the sacred of this particular human form on this wet day in November, the last of the leaves, ready to drop, rust, blood, brown. And then the final poem. You who were so quiet, didn't you know there was a symphony inside you? Didn't you know you were composing? The trumpets are so glad, and the French horn in its great deep beckoning resounds. Didn't you hear the calling? From your stillness, as if you had looked out over calm waters to see the geese rise up in unison in front of the setting sun. Such a squall of color, and your whole being given to the one who rests in the great up-flapping, the geese mounting higher and higher into the evening, growing brighter and louder still. Thank you. And I guess we're going to go over and have some questions and answer. And I guess I also want to say, if you're interested in this book, I put together a series of meditations and writing prompts that specifically go with the book, because I feel like so many of my poems are generated from other people's poems, and I want my poems to help generate your own writing. So I'll have a sign-up form, and if you want to do that, you can put your name down and then receive those recordings. And I have other recordings on my website also if you're interested, but we'll go over here.
Hello, everyone. And now it is your beautiful time to shine. It is the moment for our audience Q&A. So if you have any questions for our poets about their work, about their process, just in general, feel free to raise your hand and I'll call on you.
I'll ask her question.
Yeah,
I love Nadia. I love all your poems. Thank you for sharing. But the last one, you. Are you you?
We're all you. But yes, don't tell anyone. Okay. Well, it was a secret, so.
Thank you.
Is it on? I don't think so.
No.
Okay.
Oh.
Yes.
Nadia, I have a question for you. You mentioned that.
You're
okay,
go for it.
yeah. Writing your poems at 21, now 51. How do you feel? How do you feel about reading something like?
Old. No. Actually, turning 50 is great. I highly recommend it. It gets better.
No one said that. That's changed for you.
Well, that could be an interesting question for all of us, right? We've been writing for a long time, but I think for me, my process, I think, is easier. I used to feel like a more tortured writer, and now I feel like if a poem comes, it comes. If it doesn't come, it doesn't come. It will come another time, and so my themes are definitely different, but I find actually that the poems that I put into this book, there was also a lot of continuity. So I've gone through a lot of big personal changes, and sometimes I felt like, who am I going to be on the other side of that? Am I going to still be recognizable? And then I look back and I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm still me. Here I am. Yeah, I don't know. Do you guys want to respond? How has your poetry changed over the years?
I just want to say I read your book and I had no idea that there was that big of a time difference. That's amazing.
Well,
To me.
just a few.
Yeah.
There were like little breadcrumbs, but yeah.
I don't know. I'm about to turn 50 in a few weeks, so I'll answer that next month. I don't know. I mean, writing's just always, it's been a part of my life since before I could write, I'm told. I would make other people write things down. So, yeah, I think what Nadia said is true for me too. Like, I stopped putting certain kind of pressure on myself because at some point that you realize that isn't the point, you know, that it's not this kind of output, or it's a matter of like being open and receptive. So I think that is once I realized that receptivity was more the point than output, I guess, I got to return to the joy I felt as a little kid wanting to write. So maybe that's my biggest lesson of all these years of writing, I think.
Yeah, I have a question for Sasha. Can you talk about your relationship to the situation you were writing about, whether writing about it brought you closer to it and made it painful, or gave you a distance from it, or both?
Yeah, that's a great question, and the question was about my experience of writing through this, through the cancer treatment and diagnosis. I think I just, I always write to process, so part of it was definitely just like necessary for me. But I think the most important thing for me was reading other writers who had experienced that, in particular women who, like Rachel Carson, who, if you know Silent Spring, she wrote that book while dying essentially of breast cancer, but she didn't tell anyone because she didn't want to be discredited on the basis that she was saying the world is toxic. People are dying of like exposure. But she thought she might be discredited by saying that while also writing the book. So I just was really curious. Also, Susan Sontag wrote Illness as Metaphor without talking about her cancer. So I was really interested in the women who were writing about this experience, but in kind of a veiled way, or they were writing to their friends or lovers very intimately about it, but not publicly. I don't know, that to me that was like really not comforting that they were hiding it necessarily, but comforting that there was such intimacy. Usually the intimacy was what allowed them to talk about it. So in letters, journals, diaries, etc., they were writing, and that really brought me closer to the thing that really helped me was intimacy, right, with friends and people and relationships. So I don't know if that's exactly an answer, but it certainly did help me write through it. But mostly read through it in some ways was really what mattered.
Yeah, sort of relatedly, but for all three of you, could you talk a little bit about the process of putting the books together? Because they seem kind of like project books to me, all three of them. So,
that book took maybe like 6 or 7 years to come together. And I think for a while I was writing in one mode, doing that like 7-line poem, and then at some point I shifted into like the unpunctuated tercets. It was more like a formal thing, but then as the form changed, then the things that I was able to say also changed. So it was, I think, just as I got tired maybe of like writing in a particular way, then I would start writing in a different way, and then that would allow something else to come forward. So what was interesting to me actually was to see that there was a lot of similarity among it all, because it had felt really different in the process of writing the different sections. Yeah.
Well, I love that book, your book, and what I love about it is, like, yeah, there's a lot of different forms, but there's a voice. There's like so a lot of things in my opinion, make a book kind of gel, and they could be, like I had a book I wrote before this was 11 syllable line poems that I wrote when I had insomnia to keep myself like, alive. Like, I can't sleep, I'll write this thing. But like that, I guess I think of that as holding that book together. Whereas I think of more of a subject of this book holding it together, but I definitely love the voice in that book, and I feel like even if the poems are really different formally, it does feel like a cohesive thing based on that for me, reading it.
Yeah, I would agree with you about Melissa's book, and your book clearly has a theme. And my book, I actually wrote many of the poems not thinking I was actually ever going to write poetry again, not even really being aware that I was writing poetry. You know, they would just come to me, and so I just wrote them down, and then there were these poems, and then later at a certain point I was like, I wrote all these poems, I wonder what they are. And I had a lot of them, and I worked through them, and, you know, I kind of read through them and took some and got rid of a lot of them, but I was like, actually there are some poems here that I really like, and then I revised them. But I definitely didn't have a kind of project in mind as I wrote most of the poems. It was more afterwards that the poems told me, oh, there's something here that you wanted to say that were coming out. And then I spent a lot of time figuring out the arc of the book. So it now feels to me very much like a book that has a real arc, but that was kind of after I wrote the poems.
Well, we have time for one more question. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. I'd be really interested to know how you each got into poetry. And just backstage, like if there was any like influences or like outside friends or people that influenced you.
Great question.
I have an answer, which is that I was finishing my undergraduate degree. I was about to do an American Studies program, and I took a writing workshop with a poet named Claudia Keelan. And she was that next year beginning a Master's of Fine Arts at UNLV, where I did my undergrad. And she's like, no, you should do this instead. You should stay. So I wrote the program that I had committed to and said, I'm not going, I'm doing this other thing. So I definitely had a person in particular who really told me I could do this thing. I just never thought it was something I could do. So she's hugely important to me for so many reasons, but permission is always nice.
I've always been since I was little, like Sasha was saying, but then when I was in high school, I grew up in New Orleans, and they had a arts magnet high school that you had to apply to and commit to spending 3 hours a day studying that thing. And I really wanted to do something, and I thought that writing was the only thing that I was medium good at. So I was 16, and I was yeah, I'm gonna do this. But it was an amazing education for a high school student, for sure.
And like you, I also wrote as a kid, but I think it was when I had my first child that I really said, hey, wait a minute, I want to pay attention to my own voice. And with lots of twists and turns, but that was the moment for me.
That's actually beginnings. This is kind of a nice note to end our conversation on. Thank you to our audience for being here, for your wonderful questions, and thank you to the three of you for sharing your amazing work. Let's give
And thank you, Bonnie. Thank you for making this happen, and thank you to the bookstore. And yeah, thank you all for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
If folks would like to buy a book, you can do so at the back counter, and you can line up right at this table, and this is where our signing line is going to be. So thank you again.